statement of necessity here for our virtual meeting.
Great, thank you. So this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy committee meeting, which is taking place via teleconference. Notice of this meeting was posted to the board's website on July 23rd, 2020. As there is not a physical quorum present, this statement is read into the record and filed with the Tennessee Secretary of State as required by statute. Pursuant to TCA 844-108B2, if a physical quorum is not present at the location of a meeting of a governing body, then in order for a quorum of members to participate by electronic or other means of communication, the governing body must make a determination that a necessity exists. That determination must include a recitation of the facts and circumstances on which it was based. Further, TCA 844-108A3 defines necessity as matters to be considered by the governing body at that meeting require timely action by the body. Physical presence by a quorum of the members is not practical within the period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of the members by electronic or other means of communication is necessary. As stated, this is a regularly scheduled meeting for the Tennessee State Accountancy Committee meeting. The purpose of this meeting is members attending by teleconference.
Somebody's got their mics on for both the phone and the computer. You got to cut one of them off.
Okay, I think that stopped it. The purpose of this meeting was members attending by teleconference is to conduct the quarterly scheduled meeting of the board via teleconference due to COVID-19. All voting will be conducted by roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I appreciate that. This will be our committee meeting session. We'll have our regular board meeting tomorrow morning. One of the things that we're going to do to accommodate Todd's meeting schedule with the meetings that he has scheduled with the governor's office is we will move the enforcement committee report probably to the end of the agenda for the committee meetings today to allow him to complete his meeting and hopefully get back to join us for that meeting. And so what I'd like to do is to go ahead and begin with the licensing committee meeting, and that is chaired by Gay Moon. And Gay, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. The first thing on our agenda is NASBA has requested us to consider accepting a upper division accounting course, which is the Accounting Analytics course number 6350. Wendy did confirm that this is a graduate level MAC course, and we were provided with a course description, objectives, format, accounting analytics project, which is part of the coursework, a schedule, and a reading list. We were also provided with the audit section blueprint for assessing risk and planning further procedures, as well as a portion of the BEC CPA exam area 4, which is information technologies. Both of these descriptions include much of what is covered in the course objectives, which primarily are the understanding of big data and analytics in the accounting profession, developing an analytical mindset, which is essential to solving unstructured accounting and business problems using accounting data, understanding the processes that are needed to identify, develop, and analyze accounting data and to ensure the integrity of that accounting data, to gain experience with analytic tools used by accounting professionals, and to learn how to interpret the accounting analytics and communicate that data-driven insights and recommendations to stakeholders, and to understand the ethical issues and business risk related to accounting analytics. The course objectives were mirrored the items that are looked for in the CPA exam. So NASBA is wanting us, like I said, to count this or determine that this would qualify for upper level accounting coursework in preparation of taking the CPA exam. So with that background, I will open it up to discussions and questions.
Okay, this is Greg. One of the things I noticed is that they used material from at least three of the big four accounting firms, and so I think it's a course that should qualify and that we should approve.
That was pretty much my thinking. The BEC section of the exam, the data section, understanding key characteristics of a relational database, recognizing the role of big data in supporting business decisions, and then using business intelligence, which includes data analytics and statistics to support business decisions. So, I mean, that was my thought process.
I wanted to take the course after I read it. This is Judy. I make a motion that we approve this course and allow it to be counted as upper level accounting required courses for the CPA.
This is Stephen, and I'll second that.
Okay. Wendy, do we want to include in this the right for your staff to approve other courses that would mirror this course from other universities, or do we want to come back before the board each time a course is asked to be considered?
I think that's up to the committee, but I think that is worth discussing. Is this an approval for this course only, or would you allow us to accept other courses, let's say if they are within the accounting section of the school?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I'm not on the committee, but if you look at the evolution project that's going through the process of proposals now, it certainly meets the qualifications as one of the topics that are being strongly encouraged in this evolution project. So I think I certainly would support it.
One of the comments that I received from the specialist with NASBA is that this was had a lot more accounting focus than most of the analytics courses she sees. And so she felt like this was kind of a gold standard type course.
Okay.
And many of them will reside in the business college outside of accounting. And so those might be courses that I would bring back to you if they were not accounting focused.
Okay. Okay. So we've got a motion and a second to recommend to the full board that we accept this course as upper level accounting for the purposes of sitting for the CPA exam. Any other discussion? We can take the other piece in a separate, or we can just do it on a case-by-case basis. Wendy, what do you think?
Since this is new, we can certainly do a case-by-case if you want
Okay.
to see what kind of courses we get.
Okay, let's just do this one case then. So do we have to do a roll call vote for our committee? Okay.
Yes, and Karen's on the line.
Okay.
Gay Moon,
Aye.
Pam Church,
Aye.
Stephen Eldridge,
Aye.
Greg Gilbert, Mr. Gilbert,
Aye. Sorry.
Judy Webby,
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Moving on to the next piece. The next one is a little bit similar, but with a different slant. This is also a data analytics course. However, it is from the medical community and biology. But NASPA is not asking for this to be considered an accounting, but a general business course that would qualify for sitting for the CPA exam. The main difference is this has the biology slant as opposed to an accounting slant. I thought this was kind of interesting. I mean, we've got a lot of people, a lot of candidates that go into the healthcare industry, but I also felt like the requirements for general business are statistics and probability, management, technology and information systems, among some other economics. So I felt like the course objectives were effective communication on the statistical method and the communicating the results. It also was going to allow the student to gain an understanding in designing a process and then interpreting the results. And then the knowledge of sampling theory and the application to solve problems. All of these objectives would contribute to the success of a CPA candidate. So I'll open this up for discussion.
Okay, I had a hard time with this one. I struggled.
You did?
Okay. And I struggle with it because one of the things that in the description mentions that if they can't get it finished, that they will just not finish it. I mean, the course, like they'll only get as far as they can get. And I don't know if that, I mean, I just was kind of worried that it might dwell more on the life sciences part than it would the analytical part. That was my only concern. And this is my husband's office. I'm a modern, so, but I wasn't sure. I might be on this one.
Well, I kind of felt pretty good about it because at the end it was learning a process.
I'm sorry, Kay. This is Dustin. Pam, can you mute yourself, please? We're getting a lot of feedback from you. Thank you.
Are we set?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. And Judy, you may need to repeat some of what you said. I don't know. But I felt like it was teaching a process which can be applied to a lot of different industries or accounting. But they're not asking for this to be an accounting course. You know, this is just general business. And when I look at the other criteria for something to be considered a general business course, I felt like this would be as helpful as some of those other courses, economics or some of the other things. Other thoughts from Pam? Do you have any?
I thought originally when I read this, I thought this has got to be a joke. Why would anybody in accounting want to go and put themselves through a biology class? But I mean, at the end of the day, statistics is statistics, and critical thinking is the same way. I think that and I'm not going to it's not really my decision, but I think I would rather take the other one because the biggest thing I see out of this is learning to use the analytics software. I think that's something that we all use. So I don't have a problem. I question somebody's sanity for wanting to do this, but that's their choice.
Could have been somebody that changed their major. I don't know, but I understand. I kind of had the same thing, but when I read the objectives, I thought, okay, this is learning a process, and it's learning to interpret, and it's learning to communicate, and those are three very basic needs that can be applied to accounting. And I don't know, maybe it's a business type class.
Can you hear me now? This is Pam.
Yes.
You
Yes,
had
ma'am.
asked about it. I have a brand new computer and I don't know how to operate it. Anyway, I have no problem with this. Remember that students have been able to take statistics or whatever in the math department for a long time. I mean, for general business courses, many of those do not fall in the business department. So the slant, somebody mentioned that, well, this doesn't take an accounting perspective. Most of the statistics courses probably that people take do not, and we even accept algebra, and algebra certainly doesn't have a business perspective. So I have no problem with that, and I think this would be at least as applicable as many of the math courses that they take. So I have no problem with that.
Okay, great point. Greg, do you have any comments or anybody else from the board?
I am good with it as well, particularly as a general business education qualifier.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion then to recommend to the full board that we accept Biology 301 Biostatistics for a general business course in qualifying to sit for the CPA exam?
So moved. Stephen.
Okay. Can I second it?
Second, I'll second it.
Okay. Okay. All right. We need to do a vote.
Gay Moon,
Yes.
Pam Church,
Yes.
Stephen Eldridge,
Yes.
Greg Gilbert,
Yes.
Judy Weatherby.
Yes.
Okay. We'll move on. Wendy, did you ever find out how to pronounce this gentleman's name?
No.
Okay. Well,
ZJ.
I apologize on the front. How do you say it, Stephen?
I just said ZJ.
ZJ. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. We have a young candidate for the CPA who has passed 2 parts of the exam, and because he went home, I assume maybe during the Christmas holidays, I don't know, ZJ is trapped in China and cannot get back to take the CPA exam. He had excellent scores in the 2 parts that he's passed, so he certainly most likely would have passed the others, but he is requesting an extension of time to sit for the other 2 parts of the exam as a result of the travel bans and not being able to get back into the States. And I did confirm that January 31 was the date the ban was announced, and then it became effective on the Sunday, the 2nd at 5 p.m. So, and I did not see where this has been changed or any kind of revisions to these travel bans for the foreseeable future. So, conversation.
I make a motion that we extend the period for this young man. I think he's just been directly affected by the COVID-19 problem. So it seems fair to me. I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on this?
Just for clarity, we would be extending both of these to what, 12/31/21?
That's correct.
We're not extending both of them a year, just getting to the same date.
We're extending both of the parts that he has taken until 12/31/2021.
Okay.
Any other comments? We've got a motion and a second. Okay, Karen, would you take a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Gay Moon,
Yes.
Pam Church,
Yes.
Stephen Eldridge,
Yes.
Greg Gilbert,
Yes.
Judy Weatherby,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The last piece came in at the last minute about Mr. Beckett, who back in 2008 and 2009, he passed all the sections of the CPA exam. Sadly, it was during a time of economic downturn. He could not find a job in which he had an immediate CPA supervisor to get his experience in. He has been teaching some accounting principles and some other things, and he has now completed 3 years of experience with the CPA direct supervisor, and he is asking for the 10-year extension because all CPA parts that are passed expire after 10 years, and he is asking for an extension of this 10 years. If we did not do that, he would have to start over again, as well as taking some additional accounting courses because of the educational requirement changes during the past 10 years. I think he said 2019 was a difficult time in his life and it made it challenging to get his paperwork done in Tennessee. But Wendy, did we get any other information about that? Was it health related or something beyond his control?
In 2019 or 2009?
He said 2019 was a difficult time in my life that made it challenging to get my paperwork done. I guess he was looking at the 10-year expiration. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think he misunderstood that technically the expiration date would have been August of 2018 because it's from the date you pass your first part.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, so it would be August 19th of 2018. So, but I think you're right. I think he's talking about that 10-year mark.
Okay. All right. Discussion.
Do we know when he got his three, well, he said 3 years, his 2 or 3 years of experience?
Stephen, I think that he talks about it being recently.
Yeah, I have worked from 2017 with the CPA as a direct supervisor. So he's completed that 3 years, it sounds like.
Okay. I mean, that was my only hang up on this is, we're waiting until the year after, but if him needing to delay till he got to work under CPA, then I've got sympathy, and he's done everything he's supposed to do, and I hate to take something away like this from somebody else.
The one thing I just want to make sure everybody knows is that if you approve this today, he still will need to go through an academic evaluation to make sure that his education meets the current requirements for licensure. I think there's a chance that could be short. I don't know. But the educational requirements 10 years ago were different and less than they are today.
But Wendy, haven't we granted somebody kind of a grandfather-in clause if that's based on when they pass the test? Have we done that before?
Not to my knowledge.
I thought we did that. Maybe I swear I thought we did that. We gave them, it may have been the rights to take the exam. I don't know.
Marie, I don't know if maybe you can speak to whether the board has the authority to allow him to have met the education requirements since he did that at that time.
I'm sorry, I some background noise. I can't really. Can you repeat the question, Wendy?
I think what we're talking about here is if we were to extend his exam scores, he qualified under different educational requirements, and it's my understanding he would have to get that reevaluated under current law and rule. And Stephen's asking, does the board have the authority to approve the evaluation of his education as it were in 2008 when he sat for the exam?
Okay, I'll have to look in the rules and see. I know as far as, you know, approving the exam, it's their sole discretion, so it seems like there's broad language there. But I'll have to look in that context to determine if the board has that authority. So I can do that, and if you guys want to move on, I can come back.
Okay.
That's right off the bat. I don't.
Are there any other comments or questions that people might have for Maria to look at or our staff to look at? Okay, Wendy, should we just wait until we hear from Maria, or should we go ahead and vote on whether or not we would give him the extension, and then we can determine about the education piece of it at a later time, or should we do it all at once?
I think you could just defer this to the full board if you
Okay.
want. And hopefully by tomorrow, then Maria could have something to help you all make a decision.
Okay, that will be fun.
Okay.
All right, Kevin, I think that is all that the licensing can review.
Thank you so much, Gay, and appreciate your work and that of the committee here on the issues that were before you.
Okay,
as I
thank
mentioned
you.
earlier, we will go ahead and move the enforcement committee to the last committee report on the agenda in hopes that Todd will be able to rejoin us from his meetings with the governor's office.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I just want
yes.
to interrupt. This is Todd. I'm going to drop for that meeting, and I'll notify you when I return.
Thank you so much, Todd. Take good care.
You too. Thanks, sir.
So the next committee meeting report will be laws and rules, and that is chaired by Janet Booker Davis. And Janet, if you're ready, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. We have 2 items on our agenda today for this committee. And the first one, we did get some pre-meeting materials on, and that related to a proposed revision to the UAA model rules. And they're wanting comments, and this document is very detailed, and Wendy has agreed to kind of walk us through that. And the second item on the agenda is, I think that's just an ask that Wendy had some thoughts about, and she wants to give a little background on that. And there's no document for that second item on the agenda. So while Wendy has the floor, she'll go through that as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Wendy to start walking us through the UAA proposed model rule revisions.
Thank you, Janet. So I know a number of you attended the NASBA regional meetings back in June, and hopefully listened to the UAA presentation on this detailed proposal of changes to the education model rules. NASBA recently approved this revision, and they are looking for comments. They are due by August 30th. The intent of these changes is to, this is in line with the evolution project, and the intent is to make changes to the model rules that are in line with that evolution project and assist in the new licensure model. So this document that I provided you was a summary of those changes, as well as track changes that show you how the model rules would be changed if this is approved. And then finally, a copy of our rules that we have in place currently, and then kind of a side-by-side comparison of what's in the model rules compared to what we have in Tennessee as our current rules. What we're looking for today is probably any thoughts, comments that you all have related to the model rule proposals, and then whether you as a board would like to comment on these. What would happen is if there are specific areas that you would like to comment on to NASBA, we would talk about what those points are, and then I could draft a comment letter and work with with the chairman to get that finalized to send over by August 30th. We won't have another meeting for you all to formally get together and approve a comment letter, but we could work through the chairman to get that handled. So real quickly, I'll try to summarize what the changes are and how they relate to our current rules. And then we can talk about any comments that you all have. Keep in mind that the point of the Uniform Accountancy Act model rules is to provide a set of vetted rules that states could use in order to maintain uniformity across the country. And so states are encouraged to follow this, although you don't have to follow this document. But it is helpful as any state goes about making changes to their rules to have kind of a template to go by that has been considered and vetted and approved. And so within these changes, I'll just highlight the items that he talks about in this opening letter. The first item is that in the current model rules, the accounting programs must be from accredited colleges or universities. That's important, but the accreditation process has changed a bit, and some of the AACSB accredited organizations have fallen out of recognition by this Council for Higher Education Accreditation. And so I believe what the committee has determined is that there are a lot of viable programs out there that should be accepted as accounting education. And the change in the model rules put that recognition on the board. So it gives the board the authority to approve the programs that they feel meet requirements and would include those AACSB accredited schools. The second bullet talks about adding some skill sets of critical thinking and professional skepticism to the skills that colleges would work to develop during the educational process. The third bullet talks about required accounting content. So in our current rules, we talk about requiring 24 hours of upper division accounting credit, and it's very broad. The board can approve whatever they would like under that accounting subject matter. What they've done in the model rules is they're actually listing various types of subject matter that would be considered compliant towards that 24 or 30 hours of accounting that's required to sit for the exam. And we'll see that here in a minute, a little bit more about that in a minute. Pre-approval of an internship hours. So we currently allow internship hours to count towards the accounting requirement. They don't have to be pre-approved. So these rules require, talk about a approval process so that the school is aware of the program that the student is undertaking and feels that it appropriately adds to the educational content. Boards are being urged to complete transcript reviews. This is something that we already do in Tennessee. We do not, the current model rules allow you to skip a transcript review if you have designated a certain accrediting body as meeting the requirement. So for example, in some states, an AACSB accredited school, as long as you received a degree from there, you were fine. And that's not the way our rules are written in Tennessee. And so we have always done a transcript review of the specific courses, which allows us to accept really any course that the board is willing to accept. So that wouldn't be a change for us. The next bullet, changes to align requirements among states to add data analytics, and also broadening the scope of the accounting education to include any future subject matter that's added to the exam blueprints. And so this kind of gives you an emphasis on data analytics, which hasn't been in the rules previously. And so this adds that to the rules, making it clear that it is important in the education of someone wanting to sit for the exam. And so that kind of goes over the summary of items included. Let's see, the one area that I initially thought maybe we would want to comment on would be the course specificity. I can't say it. Specific courses that they list as being required to meet the education requirements to sit for the exam. So on page, let's see, it's page 3 of the actual model rule draft. There's some highlights there, and then there's some red lines where I try to show you where they require 3 hours each in those top 4 subject matter areas, and then 12 hours in some or all of the remaining subject matter areas. And so I know some states have moved away from specific course subject matter in order to not restrict the board from accepting a certain course to meet the requirements. And of course, that's where we are. Ours is very broad. You just have to have 30 hours in accounting, and the board has the authority to approve those courses. However, this does give a nice framework for what colleges and universities should be preparing the student for. So I think there's goods and bads, and I'm really not sure there's a bad here, because at the very end you'll see that other topics can be added as they're added to the blueprint. So I think it gives it gives some flexibility in allowing additional courses to count as we move forward. There's also not a lot here that I've seen on transcripts that wouldn't be included in one of these subject matter areas. And so that's probably the biggest one that stood out to me. We require 6 hours in internship hours. They are increasing that to 9 and allowing 3 hours to count towards business, I believe, is the way I read it. So I have been advised that Tennessee, even if these are approved, Tennessee would not have to make any changes to be compliant with the evolution project. So although we may want to make some small changes, especially in the crediting area, some of our wording is a little outdated with the names of the accrediting bodies and that type of thing. I do think we eventually want to make some updates there, and could incorporate other items after this document is approved and we see where this is heading. I think that concludes kind of what I wanted to highlight there, Janet. Does anyone have any comments, questions, thoughts?
Would you say the deadline for comments is the 30th, or is it the 31st?
It would be the 30th of August.
Okay, the document had the 31st. That's why I was asking.
Oh, there's not 31 days in August, is there?
Yeah.
I think there are.
Oh, are there? Okay, sorry. It is the last day of August. Sorry.
Okay. Just a clarification point.
Yep.
Wendy's, does this affect at all the 150-hour rule? Well, I remember when we were in Boston, they had some students up on the stage, and they were talking to them about how they felt about the 150-hour rule, and they were saying that they would appreciate having more guidance on what to do with that. Can y'all hear me? So does this have any effect on the 150-hour rule?
My understanding is it does not have any effect on that. Andy, I don't know if you have.
It does not. It doesn't affect the 150-hour rule. It kind of gives some guidance as to what's acceptable when there's 30 extra hours. But it via how they're laying it out here, but it does not affect it at all.
Yeah, and I think that's what those students that they interviewed that day were asking for. It was that they wanted some help on making it more uniform on what that extra 30 hours could be. Maybe this would help that. I don't know.
I actually think it would, based on the way it's written.
Yeah, I think this is a good document.
I think the intent here is to get everybody on the same page and get all the UAAs kind of lined up, and I like it. I don't know if, of course, I'll probably tell this tomorrow, but I don't know if anybody saw. Friday was quite a day for NASBA, and that we actually passed the CPA evolution at the board level. So the CPA evolution is on the tracks now, and they're probably going to come out with a timetable pretty soon. So the annual meeting will have a lot about the committees that are being formed and how other changes are starting. One of them will be education. I know that when we met, we really we went through several talks about the different committees and how they were going to be structured. And we had actually asked if we could get Pam Church on one of the committees to represent Tennessee. So I'm hoping that she can.
It's the first I've heard of that.
Hopefully you're going to get a call this week.
Okay, good. Well, my impression of this was if a board complied, it would be a lot of work. The ethics course, looking at the detail, looking at some of the details. Now, we already do a lot of work, but it still gives the board a lot of leeway. Am I right, Wendy, as far as to what extent you want to adopt it? These are the ideal guidelines, is that correct?
Correct.
So yes, I thought it was very good. I just thought if you really adopted every provision, it could be kind of tough.
It wouldn't be any tougher to adopt or to actually manage than what we currently have, do you think, Wendy?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the process of getting rules changed is the hardest part. It's
right.
Not the content of the rules, it's just the process of rule changes.
And I'm kind of hoping.
The one thing that I think that, if we were to adopt this in totality, anything that appears to give more constraints or more specifics to meeting the requirements to be licensed can always be a hurdle. So if you go from 30 hours in accounting and then you specify that, it's just the way you deliver that to the government ops committee, on why this is important or why we need to do this. And it could look like you're being more restrictive. When really what you're doing is trying to provide more specifics so that this candidate understands what it is they need to take.
I'm sensitive to that too, because of people who return to college and become CPAs. You want to make sure that if you put up more hurdles, they really are necessary hurdles, because I personally know a lot of returning students, and I have encountered them in my career as well, who might not have followed through if they had a lot of accounting courses, but it just didn't meet this prescription and they'd have to take a bunch more. So I think we need to be aware of that as a board. But again, there's nothing wrong with what they're saying. But I sort of like the way our rules are written. I think they have flexibility while upholding some good standards. So I would just encourage us to look carefully at what we want to change.
So I think, Janet, were you trying to say something? If your mic is off, if you were.
Oh, yes, I was. I was just asking if anybody else had any comments, and I think your goal here is to determine if we want to make comments to NASBA on this document.
Correct.
And based on, I guess, what you're saying, I'm not hearing any per se objections to the document.
I'm not either, Janet.
So I guess if our conclusion is that we'll recommend to the full board tomorrow that there's no need for comments, and we think the document is helpful and does provide some good information, but we don't feel it's necessary to make any comments. Is the rest of the committee in agreement with that? I'm not hearing any objections that they're not, so.
So moved.
Okay, so we'll go with that. And then Wendy, I'm sorry, Judy, did you have something you were saying?
I was just saying so moved.
Oh, okay. Do we need a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, do we need a roll call vote to move this forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Larry Elmore,
Aye.
Trey Watkins,
Aye.
Judy Weatherby,
Aye. Aye.
Okay, so we'll propose to the board tomorrow then that we think the document is good. It will be helpful, but we don't see a need to comment further on that. And you had some thoughts that you wanted to share about including a state ethics course on reinstatement applications or activations. So do you want to?
Sure.
Thoughts?
Sure. So as you all are aware, whenever it's time for you to get your continuing education requirements, you're required to get 2 hours of state-specific ethics, board-approved state-specific ethics. And so that's the only place in the rules right now where that is a requirement. And so we have had some instances where folks are out of active practice for a while. Either their license expired a number of years ago or they've gone inactive for a number of years. And the requirements to bring that license back active include 80 hours of technical CPE. The time frame differs for a reinstatement and a reactivation, but the point is you're required to get 80 hours of technical CPE to bring your license back to active status. It does not include any type of requirement for obtaining the state ethics course. And my ask today is, would you all be interested in a rule change which does require that the 80 hours include at least 2 hours of board approved state specific ethics? This is adding somewhat adding a requirement. It's just specifying that 2 of those 80 hours should be in state specific ethics. And the reason for that is there's so much important information in that course that brings a licensee up to date on what the requirements are now and today, and sets them up for success as they get back into the profession. And we find that a lot of folks that are not meeting CPE requirements or doing a test work without proper licensure or peer review are folks who have not taken the state ethics course. And so I felt like this was something that would set folks up to be better prepared as they re-enter the profession. And so my ask today is, are you interested in this? If so, I will work with Maria to draft some language that you all could look at the next meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
I actually thought that it was already a requirement, so I think this is great that you brought this up, Wendy, and yes, definitely would be my vote.
Hey, Wendy, something I've been meaning to ask that was sort of along the same line. You know that presentation that Alfonso did for us a couple of years ago on some courses that his group has that you can use for people who are in a penalty situation or a reinstatement? Have we ever used any of that? Because I think we voted to try to use that in cases where we could, but are we using that?
We have used it, I think, twice now. It has been in the disciplinary actions for two different respondents.
Okay.
And so if you during the legal report, if you think of a case where we have not recommended something like that you think would be important, we can certainly add it.
Yeah, it really had nothing to do with this topic here. I was just trying to throw that in while I was remembering it, because
Yeah.
I've been meaning to ask that for the last couple of meetings and I keep forgetting to do so.
Right. Now what they do is a more general ethics course and not state specific.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but yeah. All
Do
right.
we
Do we
any more discussion on this or comments? So, do we need a motion to approve your asking legal to adopt something on this?
I think the motion would be to ask staff and legal to create something that would address this.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We want a roll call vote.
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Mary Elmore,
Yeah, aye.
Trey Watkins,
Aye.
Judy Weatherby,
Aye.
Okay, I think that's cared. Thank you, Wendy, so much for going through both of those items for us. And Kevin, that's all we have for this committee.
Okay, thank you, Janet, and thank you, committee members, for the good discussion and work on those items. And thank you, Wendy. What we'll do next is our executive committee meeting, and then that will be followed by the enforcement committee. Hopefully, Todd will have a chance to rejoin us by then. And on the executive committee action list or report list, we have, I think, a couple of reporting items and then one potential action item. And so, Wendy, I'll turn it to you to walk through the fiscal year 20 year-to-date financial results reporting that was in the read-ahead packet.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Yes, you should have your typical 3 documents there: net position statement, the operating results compared to last year, and and then my discussion of various line items. And so we are doing fabulously so far this year because we haven't had any travel and a lot of reduced expenses. So currently, this is as of, are y'all still there? Oh, okay. Sorry, everything went blank on my screen. So far this year, this is for our fiscal year ends June 30. This is as of May 30 this year, and we are at $980,615 in revenue after the state reg fee. And our expenses are coming in at $781,848 for the current year, leaving us with a positive $198,767. And really, travel is the big area that we're seeing some savings. Communications and shipping, we have not been doing much mailing during this downtime. I do think we'll see a little bit of an increase there once we're able to get printing services back online and some of the wall certificates are being able to mail out again. But overall, our revenues are up a bit this year, which I have asked Fiscal to give me a breakdown of revenues, which I still don't have, because it's not really mimicking our state reg fee. And when I say that, what I'm saying is for each license that is issued or renewed to active status, we are charged a $10 reg fee for that license. And so you'll notice that our reg fee is down 14%, which would mean we would be down, gosh, almost 1,000 renewals, which is not the case exactly. In fact, our revenue is up 2.2%. And the information I have would indicate that case and complaint is about flat to the prior year. So I'm still waiting on some information there. In the end, it doesn't affect the bottom line except for, additional money that goes into reserves potentially. So Salaries overall with longevity and employee benefits is a little over the prior year, which would be expected with raises and the like that took place at the beginning of the year. So that is the only area that we're seeing a significant increase over the prior year. Let's see. Travel, of course, is favorable to budget. We have a 28% savings there due to cease travel for the current fiscal year. And of course, there is a travel ban at the state level, so we will not be traveling until further notice. Third-party professional services is basically flat to the prior year, and we are in line with budget. Supplies have been minimal recently, and specifically due to working at home, not needing the supplies, most things being done online, and no need for office supplies. Rentals and insurance, typical expenses there. We've seen our copier and fax rental really go to almost nothing because that's a shared expense now with other boards. We have only a few copiers in the building that we share with the other regulatory boards. Let's see here. Employee training, we do our registration fees to NASBA events out of that line item, and that's $695 per individual participant. So without us attending those events, we're seeing a significant savings there. Computer related items, same thing. It is ahead of last year because we had an expense for our Zendesk customer service platform that fell in that category where it's fallen in cost backs in the prior years. So that would be a little bit above the prior year, but we're still in line with budget there. State professional services includes rent, telephone, IT support, specific to our board, lease on our car, fuel and usage charges. We have not seen expense there. Sherry has not needed to use the car for much. She's been able to do most, if not all, of her investigative work over the phone and via WebEx. So we are doing well there. Year-end cost backs, we are seeing less than the prior year in our legal expenses, and the assistant commissioners cost backs are also about 30% less to the prior year. So we are definitely seeing some savings there from a cost back standpoint. And I think that covers the main items. Are there questions on the financials?
Wendy, I'm not hearing any questions, so thank you for the overview and also for the information presented in the read-ahead packet. The next item is a potential action item for which the committee will need to take action to recommend to the board if it so chooses. And that relates to the mutual recognition agreement relative to the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. This is arising out of negotiations and review by NASBA with its counterpart in South Africa. And there was some mention of this, I believe, at the NASBA regional meetings, the virtual regional meetings that were undergone earlier in June. But Wendy, would you like to just basically summarize what we have here? I think NASBA has approved effectively recognition and reciprocity with the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. And so now it's up for a discussion for our board to do the same.
Correct. So when an individual is licensed in one of these mutual recognized countries, then they do not have to completely re-credential, so they don't have to take the exam again. And so if they can prove, similar to reciprocity, that they are in good standing with the license in their home jurisdiction, then they can apply for the CPA license in the United States. They will, once they show that they satisfy those requirements, then they would take what we call the IQEX exam, which is basically the version of the CPA exam to make sure that they are in compliance and understand the requirements, tax requirements in the US. And once they do that, we would get that information, and then they are eligible to become fully licensed in the United States. And so what I provided for you today was basically an explanation of what a mutual recognition agreement is, the actual agreement with South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, and specifics of this particular mutual recognition agreement. The board has the authority to designate another entity to evaluate and approve these organizations, and can designate these credentials based on NASBA's research and approval of such. So are there questions about this process or about what is being asked today?
Wendy, do we normally follow NASBA's recommendations? Are we consistent with their recommendations as far as other international certification being reciprocal?
Yes, there are 6 or 7 other mutual recognition agreements in place, and this board has approved all of those.
Okay, thank you.
Wendy, is this agreement with the American Institute of CPAs or the American International Certified Chartered, whatever it is, Certified Public Accountants?
So IQAB is the group that does the research and approves this, and it is made up of representatives from both both NASBA and the AICPA.
Well, which AICPA is it? Is it the one that Certified Public Accountants or the Association of International?
I would say the American Institute of CPAs. It's my understanding that it's spelled out when it's the association.
Okay. Do we have any indication as far as the quality of their licensure versus ours? I mean,
the quality of South Africa?
Yeah.
I mean, that is what the agreement is about, meaning this group, IQAB, has done the due diligence to check into the requirements in that country, and do we want to create this mutual recognition agreement? And I think that's why there's only 6 or 7 out there, is because it's an extensive process, and we want to make sure that those individuals are similarly, if not more, stringent than we are in the United States. And sometimes, and of course, South Africa would do the same thing for a CPA. If a CPA went to work in South Africa, you would be able to go through the same process to be licensed in South Africa and not have to take their particular, CPA exam, whatever that would be in South Africa. So yeah, I feel good that this group spends significant amounts of time researching and making sure that these organizations have similar, if not more stringent requirements than the CPA.
And I would second that. I mean, it's a very involved and detailed process. They have people devoted full time to it, and it's a very extensive. We get reports on it at the board level, and it's just that they go and they break it down, they come back and they report, and it's a 2 or 3 year process before one's ever entered into. I mean, it takes a long time to get one of these agreements together.
And Stephen, to answer your question, when you go to the front page of the mutual recognition agreement that I provided, it does say the American Institute of CPAs.
I just get confused based on the AICPA's website. It's got the other name on there, so I just want to make sure. I mean, last question, I'll be quiet. What's the benefit for our license holders here, other than if they decide to go work in South Africa, they could get whatever their credential is without having to take their exam? Is that right?
I think, yeah, that's definitely the benefit for those that may be trying to work over there, for sure. I talked to Kevin a bit about this, and I'd like him to share his thoughts and why this one particularly of all of them is exciting.
Yeah, and Stephen, that's just a good question that you've asked, and I think from my experience with Deloitte, but also particularly with the other three of the big four firms, the international firms, there's actually a lot of folks from South Africa that are coming to the U.S. or historically have come to the U.S. to help in the technical department or particularly in auditing standards and so forth, and not to mention just the multinational companies that exist in both and are domiciled in both the U.S. and South Africa. But there are a fair number of South African candidates, that have passed all of the credentials that they need to be licensed in South Africa. But in order to fully practice here, and at least in our firm, to become a manager or above, they would otherwise have had to sit for the CPA exam. And this is going to kind of obviate the need for that, assuming that they pass the regs test that would be ancillary to that on U.S. GAAP and tax matters. And so this was actually from a big four or an international perspective, a big deal just because of the historical flow back and forth between South Africa and the U.S.
Stephen, to give you some context, we've already had one inquiry about this. But in the whole scheme of things, we may license one or two folks under mutual recognition agreements per year.
Okay. I mean, my biggest hesitation was that, and let's not use South Africa. We won't use a country, but let's say you had a country that was more open to bribery, and you could pay somebody off to get your license, and then come here and basically get it for free. That was my concern, is that are we monitoring it as stringently as we do here?
I also believe that these come up for renewal every so often, so they are continually evaluated by IQOP.
Okay, last thing, can you tell? You said that they've got to take a efficiency test. Is that what you said?
They have to take an exam called the IQEX exam, which is basically the same as the reg version of the CPA exam.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments or questions of Wendy with respect to the mutual recognition agreement? This one does require some action, so I would look for a motion to approve the mutual recognition agreement with the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants.
So moved.
Okay,
I
we have
second.
a motion, and I'm sorry, who seconded?
Gay.
Gay, thank you. Any further comment or discussion or question? If not, Karen, will you call the roll?
Kevin Monroe,
Yes.
Stephen Eldridge,
Aye.
Moon,
Yes.
Trey Watkins.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Wendy, for presenting that, and also for the good information presented in the read-ahead packet. The next item is an informational item, and that's just a status update on our Cpe audit results. And as you know, in the last meeting, we approved a modification to the timing when results or when Cpe audit responses had to be submitted. I believe that still goes on into some point in August. But I think Wendy's got some preliminary information that indicates we've had some positive results from the recent changes that we've made to try to increase and encourage compliance with our CPE requirements. So Wendy, I'll turn that over to you.
Sure, thank you. So from the document that I provided are just some statistics on where we currently stand or where we stood as of July 17th. So I am glad we went ahead and sent out the notification in May because we had a great response. We sent out 556 requests for audit, and we have received and completed 330 of those. So I think this has been a great year for staff to be able to receive them and get them done very quickly and respond very quickly. In fact, we've had some nice comments from fellow CPAs on how efficient the process was because we were able to get that handled rather quickly. So you will see here kind of a status by week. And where we are most recently as of this document is of the audits submitted, we had 286 compliant. We've had 12 non-compliant. We've had 8 compliant with carryover. Compliant with penalty submitted, we've had 13. We have 4 in process, and a home state exemption has been claimed by 11 individuals, and we are roughly 60% complete with the audit. And so we stand overall at a 96% compliance rate, which is much better than where we have been in the past. And so this change that you all approved for renewals, I think, is has been very beneficial.
Yeah, that's great news, Wendy. And I realize it required some extra effort on the front end on the part of CPA respondents, but really they're responsible for maintaining, logs of their CPE in detail. So I'm not sure in the end it was more effort, particularly if they were selected for audit. But that's good news. I'm not so naive as to believe that probably the ones that are going to come at the very end of the audit period may have a slightly higher non-compliance rate, but even so, this is just measurable progress. And so I think hats off to the board for having the courage to make the decision to try to emphasize the need for our practitioners' compliance, and hats off to the staff for processing those so efficiently. Any other comments or questions for Wendy on the CPE audit preliminary results?
Kevin, this is Gay. Wendy, I wanted to compliment you all. I did not realize that for some firms that maintain their own listing and CPE records that you all were accepting that, but one of my audit partners was extremely appreciative that he could upload our own in-house CPE records, and that qualified, and that was a huge time saver, not having to go through those hour here and an hour there. So my hat is off to our staff for accepting those records.
Great, thank you, Gay.
Any other comments or questions for Wendy on that item?
It's going to be interesting to see our complaint reports going forward. Be interesting to see how the complaint report is affected by this in the future. Because I think this was very critical getting people on there. So hopefully this is very, because where did we get? We got up as high as 30-something%, didn't we? Failure rate one year?
Yeah, I think 29% was the highest that,
wow.
That I recall, yes.
I think this was a really big step forward for the board and for the Tennessee CPAs. Being able, that really, the result here really proved our point in getting things set up so that we don't, people have to actually upload their their info, and we're moving ahead. I'll put it that way.
Yep.
I absolutely agree, and I think the other more thanks need to go out to our colleagues at the Tennessee Society of CPAs who have worked hand in hand to make it easier for CPAs that are getting credit through society trainings to basically have automatic posting of that credit. And I think as we get more experience with this process and with this system, it will go even more smoothly. But certainly we appreciate the efforts on the part of the Tennessee Society colleagues and staff for trying to make a path easier for all of our practitioners to comply and create a well-qualified field of practitioners that are complying and not taking advantage of the system. Okay, I think that then concludes the items for the executive committee. What I would propose is this: we've been at it for about an hour and 20 minutes or so. Why don't we take a break here? I show about 2:17 p.m. Why don't we take a break until about 2:25, and then we'll come back for the enforcement committee meeting. Remember, as we break, to mute your mics and probably go off video as well, but we'll reconvene at 2:25 p.m. and we can take a stretch break or a bio break as necessary here. a little bit after 2:25 Central Time, so let's just maybe kind of go around the horn and see if that we've got everyone back. Todd has been able to rejoin us just in time for the Enforcement Committee, and so I'm just looking at who I can see here on the screen. It looks like we've got Greg and Andy back with us. And let's see, how about Gay Moon? Gay, are you back with us?
I'm right here.
Excellent, thank you. And how about Janet Booker Davis?
I am here.
Excellent, Janet. And Judy Weatherby?
Here.
Great, thanks, Judy. How about Larry Elmore?
Present.
All right, and let's see, Pam Church?
I am here.
Hey, Pam, and Stephen Eldridge? Stephen, are you with us? How about Trey? Trey, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Trey.
Yep.
I think we have, let's see, I believe we've got all of our Enforcement Committee members, so we will go ahead and with the committee report. And Andy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think everybody got a legal update report this morning, and we'll be referring to that. Also, we got a summary report, and we're going to break it down into 3 areas. First, we're going to do the consent agendas, and then the proposed discipline, and then representations, and going through in that order. We're going to start with case number 1. It's a lack of due professional care. It's the complainant is unresponsive, and that it dealt with a claim that tax returns were not supported, supported by investigators' review. The end result is that the preparer reached out to the complainant. The complainant has not responded, so the recommendation there is that we close. Number 2 is test work without. Yes, go ahead.
Do you want questions as we go through here, or do you just want to discuss them all?
We can questions as we go. So if you got a question on something, I'll pause and let you go a question.
I just got a real quick one right there. When we talk about the investigator making several attempts to contact the complainant, I mean, are we doing that in a legal fashion where it's like a certified letter, or are we sending emails, or what are we doing there? I mean, do we have documentation that support attempts?
So there's a combination of both. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, there's a combination of both. I mean, obviously there's some there's some certified letters that go back and forth in terms of the initial process. When I get a hold of it, I'm doing everything from email to phone calls. In this case, the individual did not have an email address. I actually phoned her. I actually also reached out to the information was provided in the complaint of her current tax preparer, and reached out to her current tax preparer as well to try to get a response, and she still never responded back even after I provided all of my contact information. So we do a combination of both, Larry.
I guess I'm just asking maybe for legal's input there. Does legal recommend that we do something of a formal nature, like a certified letter, when we get to that point?
We send out, so once the complainant sends in their complaint, they are then contacted. Do y'all hear an echo on me? I mean, can y'all hear me okay?
I'm hearing feedback.
There's definitely feedback.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. So whenever the complainant sends in their complaint, then they're contacted when the department actually contacts. Then once the respondent sends in a response as well. And so as far as communicating, those letters are sent out certified, but we kind of go off of what information the complainant gives us to contact them.
So if we close a case in this example and we say we made numerous attempts to contact them, Is that okay? I mean, can we be faulted for not sending certified letters at that point?
I mean, on our end, I told Terry I was comfortable with the attempts that she made, and especially because the findings that Sherry did not find anything to corroborate the complainant's assertion that the respondent did these things.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to add that the respondent in this case was able to provide copies of tax work papers, basically supporting. And in this case, tax returns were not filed because the taxpayer fell below the income thresholds, and I was able to see some evidence on the licensee side where they had work papers documenting all of that, Larry.
Yeah, so we had enough information to decide that we would close it at this point anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on case number 1? Okay, let's go to case number 2. Case number 2 is related to a test work without a firm permit. The respondent stated that he consulted with, but did not sign a report. He said that his signature was forged and the report was issued on the firm's letterhead. Now, the recommendation here is to close. However, in the process of that, we have another case that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, and that'll be case number 9. Are there any questions on this one?
Can I just ask a clarification question on this one? Where we say that in the course of this, the business consulted or submitted the initial balance sheet signed by the respondent, is that a fraudulent signature that was used? It's not clear whether that was, it just says it was signed by the respondent and rejected by the Board of Contractors. Is that a fraudulent signature there?
So the respondent in this matter made it very clear that he was not aware of the requirements that the Board of Contractors required. And then at that point, when the firm, who is a respondent in case number 9, where discipline is recommended, they were in communication directly with the auditors at the Board of Contractors, and they tried to, this respondent in number 2 asserted that he didn't think it was fraudulent or that they were intentionally trying to forge his signature, but it was more of the fact that they were trying to get the right format for what the Board of Contractors needed. And so it was just a reformatting from the initial.
Well, it says the business asked the respondent for his opinion and used respondent's signature on subsequent documents that he was not aware of. So
yeah, and so there were several emails between the respondent, that is the business, they're not a firm or associated with any CPA. They just contacted this person to prepare what the Board of Contractors needed, and so they just messed with the formatting of it to try to make it work for the application, and didn't tell the respondent in 2. However, the respondent in case number 2, he just said that he wasn't aware that he used the signature, but then he went on to say that he didn't feel like they were doing it to lie. They were just trying, or to, use his title fraudulently, but that they were just trying to make it work and didn't understand what was actually needed. So the respondent firm, or the respondent business, they had discipline recommended later on.
So the fact that they used his signature without his permission is not really part of the issue?
They're going to be penalized. Well, my recommendation is civil penalty. But like I said, I think that would be between probably the respondent and the firm or the business. But like he alleged in his response that he didn't feel that it was an intentional fraudulent use, that they were just trying to meet the requirements of the board.
Let me just add one thing, Maria. If I recall, this wasn't sent out for investigation, but I did look at it some. The report itself was issued on the letterhead of the firm. I don't know if that helps any at all, Larry, or not. It was they had a signature on there for this individual that the individual says he did not sign, but the report was actually listed, was actually reported on the, excuse me, the report is on the firm's letterhead.
So it wouldn't be a problem with the firm giving out their letterhead like that?
Well, that's why this
They
is
already had the.
This is for the CPA, and so that's why we do later on. This is a two-fold case. We have
So
this later.
That's in number 9?
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to bring that up in number 9.
Okay.
Well, I'm still a little bit confused, but we can move on.
Let me just add one other thing, and it's really a question, Maria. The way I remember this is that the individual signature, that individual was not an employee of the firm. He was just used as a contractor. The way I understood the facts of the matter was that they literally called him as a resource and said, hey, does this individual meet or this company meet the requirements to the equity requirements for the contractors board, and he's saying that's the only information he ever provided to the firm. Is that correct?
Yes.
So it seems like somebody ought to be in trouble for using this guy's signature.
Yeah.
Am I the only one?
I mean, I understand your concern, but as far as, I mean, the board wouldn't have jurisdiction over a forgery issue. If the CPA felt like the firm or the business, forged his signature, that would be a separate thing. But we have jurisdiction over whether or not they comply with our requirements, and they didn't. So that's where I kind of focused our discipline on.
Okay.
People out to be CPAs that aren't CPAs or things of that nature. I mean, is that, I don't know. I don't know how that works. I mean,
there's discipline for the firm under what I believe is our jurisdiction. And that's for, they didn't have a firm permit and that kind of thing.
So you're now talking about the accounting firm. We keep using firm, I think, to talk about the contractor and the CPA, or is that, am I getting confused now?
Sorry, when I say firm, I'm actually referring to the respondent business, the respondent tax service.
Okay.
That's reference to number 9.
Okay.
Any other questions? That one's kind of different. And when we get to number 9, I think we'll fill in some of the blanks there, hopefully. Number 3 there, lack of due professional care. We don't have any jurisdiction over this person. It's not a licensee, and recommendation is to close.
Andy, I don't have a question on every one of these, but I do have another one here. It's just on our wording here. We say that H&R Block is not a registered firm with the board. Maybe I'm just not, I don't understand. Why would H&R Block not be a registered firm?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I can't understand.
The comment.
Larry, does this go back to the fact if they don't provide tax services, I mean, attest services, they are not required to have a firm permit? I think that's the issue. As long as you're not, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just saying that, can Wendy help us here? I'm just confused on the, why would they, I think Trey, I think you're probably right. That if all they're doing is tax work, that maybe they're not registered with us for that reason. And then in that next paragraph, it says centralized complaints that were sent out. What is a centralized complaint? What does that term mean?
So I can answer this question. All of our complaints come into centralized complaints first, and then they're sent to legal.
So centralized complaint is a department?
Yeah, it's a part of the broader department, yes.
Okay. Then back up to why is H&R Block not, is that because they're not doing test services, Wendy? Is Wendy?
They're just preparing tax returns, is my understanding.
Yeah, they're not doing a test work, and they're not owned by CPAs either, nor are they using the designation. They are your typical, I shouldn't say typical, there's a whole many forms of H&R Block, but a lot of H&R Block offices are run by individuals that are not CPAs, and that's the case with this particular office.
Okay.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yeah, we thought you were AWOL there for a minute.
Sorry, my headset quit working. I think she answered it though, right? H&R Block does not need to be licensed and actually can't be licensed unless it's owned by a CPA. But
Yeah.
just doing tax work doesn't require them to be licensed. We actually do have two, I think, H&R Block offices that are owned by CPAs and are licensed.
Okay. All right, Andy.
Okay, let's move forward to number 4. This particular one is also a lack of due professional care. The parties have resolved the matter and responded active in good faith and exercised due professional care was our conclusion. And so we're recommendation of a close here. Number 5 has really 2 parts. The first one is kind of a where the person it says while the respondent requests removal of the complainant from a quarterly payment at the request of his client, the complainant's estranged husband. The contracts in question were in the names of both the complainant and her estranged husband. The assets underlying the contract were owned by his client's S corporation, 100% owned by the complainant's estranged husband. The respondent requested that all future payments related to the contract be made to the S corporation, which is the owner, due to this fact, and provided supporting documentation evidencing this ownership. The company denied respondent's request, and both parties' attorneys became involved. So they kind of settled this one. The court instructed that all payments should be deposited in the S corporation's bank account and held until the court made a final determination regarding the ownership of the funds. So in this particular one, on that complaint there, we say it's pretty much documented and close that. The other complaint that was in here was while the complainant said that while the contracts in question were in the name of both the complainant and her estranged husband, pardon me, let me go down. The complainant initially retained another CPA to complete her returns, but later decided to file jointly with her estranged husband. According to the complainant, she did this to improve her estranged husband's tax position. However, the respondent states that the complainant did not want to incur the additional cost to file separate returns, while the respondent states that he verbally disclosed his conflict of interest to the complainant. No written informed consent was obtained from the complainant in accordance with Circular 230. In summary there, what we're proposing is that that related to the letter of instruction regarding board rule 0020-03-.04, requiring licensees to maintain objectivity and integrity in engagements and to be free of undisclosed conflicts of interest, that we state that and then say that we had additionally include reference to Circular 230 requirements, which mandate obtaining informed consent in writing when a conflict of interest is present in the tax engagement. So close it, but however, reference that and state that they need to get it in writing. Another part of the complaint was related to that the complainant was saying that the respondent was acting as an attorney, and what we're going to also recommend there is to refer that matter to the Davidson County District Attorney for potential investigation, due to the fact that we really are not authorized to determine whether that person was engaged in practice of law.
So Andy, is there not you said there that that's outside the purview of our board. I thought there was a rule that said that a CPA couldn't do both, that you had to either say, I'm representing you as a CPA or I'm representing you an attorney, and not both at the same time. Now, I know we can't rule on whether he is truly an attorney or not, but I didn't think that you could even practice both at the same time.
But if I'm not, go ahead, Maria.
Sorry about that, Andy. I was just going to say, Larry, so this accountant is not an attorney. And after I reviewed and others have reviewed as well, we don't believe that he was acting in the capacity of an attorney. It's the complainant's assertion that whenever this respondent accountant reached out to the company regarding the ownership, that was overstepping his boundaries as an accountant. And so he was never, he's not a licensed attorney or acting in that. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Yeah, Maria, this is Kevin. So just to clarify what I think I just heard, and based on what I read, based on our investigation of the complaint, our investigative and or legal staff do not have any reason to believe that this guy was inappropriately acting as an attorney in this complaint or in this case that is the subject of the complaint. Is that right?
That is correct, Kevin. Thank you.
Okay. Then I think in my mind, what I would recommend, I mean, there's a piece of this recommendation here that says refer the matter to the Davidson County District Attorney for potential investigation. It sounds to me like we don't have a basis for really doing that or referring to it. On the other hand, if the complainant wants to do that, then he or she may go right ahead and do that on their own. But I don't think that's something that the board necessarily ought to be doing, given that we've seen no evidence that he acted as an attorney in the course of the work that we are doing on this complaint.
This is Todd. You beat me to it. I was going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was heading with this whole thing. If we don't have a basis for it, we shouldn't. Yeah, I agree with what you said.
Great, and I'm comfortable with that, that recommendation.
But at the same time, Kevin, I agree with what you said too, that if the complainant wants to do that, that's up to them.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Maria, I believe you have advised the complainant as such, haven't you?
Yes.
So we'll strike that from the recommendation based on what I'm hearing. Is that?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Great. I'll update that before the board meeting tomorrow.
Any other questions on that one? Okay, seeing none. Let's go to number 6, unlicensed activity, unresponsive complainant, and no evidence of that respondent held out as an accountant. So the recommendation there is to close. Lack of due professional care, number 7. The respondent's license has been expired since 12/31/93, and the recommendation there is to close. Any questions on that one? Okay, and then number 8, unlicensed activity, respondent changed business name and is now in full compliance. And so just close with a letter there. Any questions on that? Okay. Mr. Chairman, you want us to go ahead and vote on the consent agenda there and then come forward?
Sure, that's fine, Andy.
Okay. We have one change, and that's on number 5, and that's to drop the recommendation to the board under the to the district attorney as far as potential investigation of unauthorized practice of law. So change that, drop that, and so do I have a motion to confirm cases 1 through 8 with the recommendations as amended?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I ask for the roll call, please.
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Pamela Church,
Aye.
Larry Elmore,
Aye.
Todd Skelton,
Aye.
All right, next we'll go to proposed discipline. Number 9, as we talked about, is related to number 2. Here we have a firm which did issue a report that it was unauthorized to issue, and that test work without a firm permit or peer review. The recommendation is for $1,000 civil penalty. That the respondent submitted the report without proper licensure. It's this firm is, from what I understand, it's just a bookkeeping and tax firm, and they basically just do tax and business services. Any questions there? Okay, seeing none. Number 10, test work without a CPA license, a firm permit, and a peer review. Respondent submitted a report without proper licensure. Recommendations the same here. They're not licensed, $1,000 civil penalty. Any questions there?
Andy,
Right.
Andy, can we go back a second? I don't know how number 2 and number 9 fit together.
Number 2 was the kind of the person who was consulted and asked just for something to be looked at. Supposedly there was a signature on a sheet of paper.
Right.
Then from there, the firm, number 9, actually issued a report on their letterhead and copied that person's signature over. The individual didn't have any clue that his signature had been used, his or her signature had been used for them in that matter. And so now the firm is the one that issued the report. So the firm is the one that should be tagged back, number 9, for the fee, because they're not licensed for the penalty.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, then what I will ask is that we go ahead and vote on the proposed discipline on cases 9 and 10, that they be presented as read and with the recommendation. Do I have a motion?
So do we think that $1,000 is enough in this case?
That seems to be the standard that we've had for for unlicensed activity from a firm in the past.
Larry, that's consistent with the discipline matrix that we've used in the past. So I just kind of went off of what the board has done to keep consistent.
Okay.
I think that the higher $3,000 penalty has been used in the past if it was if it pertained to an audit and there was a CPA involved. But in this case, that was not there.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
So any other questions with number 9 and 10?
So I would make the motion that we approve recommendation of legal on those 2.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? I ask for a roll call, please.
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Pamela Church,
Aye.
Larry Elmore,
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
All right, we're down to the last 2 now. Representations. Number 11 is a professional competence gross negligence. According to the Secret Service, no conclusive evidence and documentation to pursue charges Respondent has moved to North Carolina and license expired in 2016. The recommendation here is just to close and flag. Any questions with that one?
So we're not recommending any kind of a penalty there for the action.
Yeah, I believe this is the one that we had that we were waiting for the Secret Service to kind of investigate and go through. And basically they came back and said there was no conclusive evidence to document the charges. So at that point, I'm not sure we have anything to stand on. Plus the fact that, you know, the license expired in 2016 and the respondents moved to North Carolina. So.
Okay.
Do we know if the Memphis Police Department or the Shelby County District Attorney had notice of this?
Yes, sir. Yeah, they had also been notified. Actually, the Memphis PD referred it to the Secret Service because of the nature.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I think this recommendation makes sense then.
Sherry, I have one question on this one. Up there where it says the respondent received all the mail and ensured it was distributed to the appropriate individuals. I don't understand why that's relevant to our situation.
I think when I initially, it's been a couple of years since I put this together initially, but basically it was sort of to demonstrate that there was no segregation of duties at all within the organization. He had full control over everything, which would add credence to some of the allegations.
So that's an old comment from the previous situation. That's not something new.
Yeah, I don't think it. Did you see that in the bolded area, or is that in the front part of the?
It's up in the top part. So
yeah, that was when we initially presented this a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Sherry, is that factual though, that he distributed the mail to the appropriate individuals?
Well, that's kind of where it was going.
It seems like he maybe didn't distribute it to the appropriate individuals.
Well, I see what you're saying. Basically, that is what the executive director who actually, dealt with, that actually filed the complaint stated. So.
If we were writing this now, we probably should say, which we're not.
Yeah, you're probably right.
We probably should have said he's responsible for making sure it went to the right person, but now we don't know if he did or not.
Right,
exactly, because we were never able to contact the respondent.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't think we want to go back and change previous wording on that. Okay, Andy.
All right. Any other questions?
Just since I'm in Memphis, just a question. Y'all do check these, make sure there's no conflicts of interest with our firms and stuff. I mean, I don't know anything about this, and I'm just making sure that y'all double check our firm's names on it.
We do. We absolutely do.
I sometimes don't know what my partners are doing, so.
I think in the past, I think the board has actually reached out to those individuals privately if there was some conflict of interest. Number 12, and this one's interesting. If you read it, there's a lot of moving parts here. The person is not working and has moved away. He contends that that his identity was stolen and does not have the means to pay the $1,000 civil penalty. So we can't get a agreed upon consent. In fact, the person has gone into hiding, and we can't even find him or her to serve the papers. So that, the statement is, do we go to a formal hearing and then go through that expense and then have judgment? I know in 2018, the board didn't understand all the facts on the case and asked legal and this committee to come back and be more open and kind of bring it to your attention in the recommendation part so that we fully understood what was going on. so we're putting it right out there and saying that there's a lot of issues in this case, and we're not sure that it's worth it to come forward with a hearing. Now, what is being proposed is one of two alternatives here. The first one is authorize a formal hearing with authority to settle via consent order upon the respondent's payment of the civil penalty in the amount of $1,000 and submission of 112 CPE hours for failure to maintain CPE and respond to the board. The second one is if respondent opts to pursue inactive license status, he may pay the $1,000 civil penalty and agree to submit 112 penalty hours at the time when he resumes activity status. The 112 penalty hours would be in addition to the standard 80 hours required to reactivation. So a lot on the backside with the second recommendation. We would still try to get the $1,000. I'm not sure if this person will have the ability to pay the $1,000, and I'll let Maria kind of go from there and take it and see if she has anything else she wants to add to that.
Yes, thank you, Andy. I just wanted to be clear with the board. I've been speaking to this respondent. There's a lot of personal matters that are going on in his life right now. I was not able to obtain documentation stating that, you know, there are proceedings with the identity theft. However, he was transparent. He has a lot of medical issues and injuries that occurred. And so my recommendation is to close his license. He indicated that he would be willing to, you know, close his license. We would waive the civil penalty, and then if he ever did come back and reactivate his license, he would need the 112 penalty hours and then a 2-hour state-specific ethics course, as well as the 80 hours that are required to reactivate a license for someone who just didn't have discipline. So I would get all of this in a consent order so that it would be binding on him. That way I think it doesn't allow him to get around the requirement, but he's just at a point in his life, and he's made that very clear, that he doesn't have the money. And I think it protects the public interest is what we do by, you know, he is closing his license. So I think it's a fair outcome, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
I have a couple of comments on that. I think we've, in the past, discussed the issue of that we don't want licensees to, whenever they get in trouble and they have a penalty that they can't or won't pay, we don't ever want to get in a situation where they just can close their license and get out of it. So that concerns me a little bit, that if he closed his license in this case, that he wouldn't have to pay the penalty. And then a question for Wendy. Wendy, after this morning's or this afternoon in the earlier part of the discussion, would this 80 hours here in this case include 2 hours of ethics since we passed that this morning or this afternoon? Hello, Wendy. Are you there, Wendy?
Well, Wendy, I can't hear you, but Larry, I would say that rule change wouldn't be effective yet, so that's why I did include it in the recommendation. I put that he needed to do this 2-hour state-specific ethics course, just because at the time that this was written, he wouldn't be required to do that.
So could we add that?
It's in there. That's why.
Can you hear me?
It's been added to the recommendation.
Yes. Okay. Well, so how do others feel about waiving the $1,000? I just remember discussions in the past where we said we don't want one solution to someone who can't or won't pay their fee. We don't want one of the alternate actions to be just, well, I'll just give up my license.
I think the alternative, though, is that this goes to formal hearing and he either shows up or we can't get him served, and then it goes to collections. I mean,
okay, that's going to cost us more than $1,000 right there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I think we've made exceptions for extenuating circumstances. So I'm with you, Larry. I'm hesitant to let people off the hook, but there are obviously many extenuating circumstances here, and I don't see any harm to the public. You know, there are provisions in place if you ever wanted to reinstate. So I'm in favor of this.
Andy, I'm on the committee, but you mind if I ask a question? Can we not attach the $1,000 to his license? So if he goes to renew it at some point, then he would have to pay it at that point?
I am not sure.
Yes, you could do that.
That's a good thought.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, you could attach the $1,000 on the back end as well if you wanted to.
I like that.
We've done that. We've done that before.
Well, yeah, that would be my recommendation, that we do it that way, because I mean, to Larry's point, I think we were trying to avoid people just, well, I'll just close my license and the penalty goes away.
Okay, we can do that, certainly. So the new recommendation will be allow respondent to close his license and then require the $1,000 civil penalty in the event that he wants to reactivate, as well as all the penalty hours that are listed.
Yes.
Stephen, that's a good idea.
Do we have confidence that?
Great idea.
Do we have confidence that all of these hardships in his life have happened? I noticed, you know, he's unable to provide documentation of some. So I'm just curious how much we can trust, verify.
I have not verified the identity theft issue, Todd, and I do have concern about that. However, this individual has sent me pictures of his injuries and just kind of detail. And I've also done some just research on different court matters that are pending with him. So it might not be an identity theft issue as much as he just has a lot going on right now. I do know there are extenuating circumstances for this individual, generally speaking.
I'm sorry you're having to receive medically inspired pictures. So thanks for the info, though.
Yeah. And I spared all of you those pictures.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
So any other questions related to this one? So I'm seeing here that we're gonna have Maria change that to where the allow the respondent to close his license, add the $1,000 civil penalty on the backside when the license is, if he ever comes back and opens up the license, with the 112 penalty hours plus 80 that will be required and complete 2 hours of a state-specific ethics. And have that changed for tomorrow. With that, then the representations number 11 and 12. Do I have a motion to accept the representations as amended for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. We can have a roll call, please.
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Janet Davis,
Aye.
Pam Church,
Aye.
Larry Elmore,
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think that concludes the legal side.
Andy?
I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Andy, and thanks members of the Enforcement Committee for working through those issues. Also, thanks to Wendy and staff, both on General Counsel and on an investigative side, for the work that you did here with respect to these complaints. That concludes the Enforcement Committee report. We've been through our 4 committee reports, and so I think what we will do is conclude our business today. And just a reminder that tomorrow morning, the formal board meeting will commence at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. And Wendy or Dustin, will we use the same login information as we did today, or will you all send a new email with the login information for tomorrow's session?
I can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I can send the login. It's different. So I will send
Okay.
the login information. It should also be in your meeting invite.
Okay.
Does any, do you?
I just pulled up the meeting invite. We actually have a join button on that invite for tomorrow morning.
Okay, so I will, I'm not sure TSCPA has that, so I'll just make sure they get it. But it is in that meeting invite. So if you don't have it there, or don't see it, let me know.
Just as a belts and suspenders process might be a good idea, just go ahead and send it out, everybody, so they have it handy.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for the hard work this afternoon, and Wendy, in particular, to you and our staff. Thank you, and we will adjourn and commence tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m.
Kevin, did you just say belts and suspenders?
Yes.
Never heard that before. Learned something new. I saw Gay laughing up there, and I was like, see you guys.
Thanks.
All right, everyone.
Chairman, appreciate it. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.